I am Chelsea Barrett, 32, and literally last weekend, my lifelong role as the family's invisible afterthought finally blew up in my face. The careful piece I'd spent years silently holding together? Yeah, it exploded into a full-blown family showdown right there in my own living room. My parents and my sister Stephanie, the family's undisputed golden child, straight up demanded I hand over my house. My house, the place I'd worked myself nearly to death to afford. And why? Because Stephanie, newly pregnant, financially irresponsible Stephanie, deserved it more, apparently. When I pushed back, my father's eyes narrowed, my mother's lips twisted with disdain, and Stephanie just crossed her arms and smirked, waiting for me to cave as usual. But this time, instead of folding, I told them no. Hard pass. The room went dead silent. My mother gasped as though I'd slapped her. "Chelsea Barrett," she hissed dramatically, "you just ruined this family." My father looked like I'd set fire to a cherished heirloom, and Stephanie blinked in shock, probably the first time she'd heard the word no aimed in her direction. Every nerve in my body was lit up, but not from shame. For the first time ever, I felt a surge of something unfamiliar: strength. Their judgment, their outrage, it didn't crush me like it always had before. Instead, it ignited something fierce inside me. I wasn't about to back down, apologize, or shrink away. No more being invisible. And definitely no more handing Stephanie every comfort and convenience she'd never worked for herself. And trust me, it wasn't easy getting here. Imagine being born into a family where your role is fixed from the start. Stephanie, the perfect, cherished daughter, and me, the one always just slightly off to the side. I'd spent years perfecting my invisibility, swallowing every disappointment, working double just to get half the recognition. And what did that get me? Exactly nothing. This moment wasn't a fluke. It was the breaking point after decades of quiet hurt, of invisibility taken for granted. My parents' reaction to my defiance wasn't disappointment or shock. It was outrage that I'd dared to defy the family script. Stephanie had always been their star, the shining center of their universe, and now that she was pregnant and struggling financially, mostly due to reckless choices they always bailed her out of, I was expected to give her everything I'd fought for. But right there in that tense, unbearable silence, I felt something shift inside me. A realization crystallized. I wasn't broken. The script they'd written for me was, and here's the tea, I'm done being a background character in my own life. Stephanie and my parents made a huge mistake thinking I'd always play along. I'm done hiding my accomplishments, done being treated as less. I'm flipping the script completely, and trust me, what comes next? It will blow their minds. If you've ever felt overshadowed, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost funny. You wouldn't believe what they'll do once they see I've stopped playing their game. My family had perfected the art of ignoring me, and it started early. As I stood in my kitchen, still buzzing from the confrontation that had just shattered the old Barrett family script, memories rushed back. I leaned against the counter, gripping its edge tightly as I recalled the countless moments I'd spent fading quietly into the background, overlooked and invisible. There was the summer I turned 15. I'd placed first in a statewide essay competition. The prize, a weekend in Washington, D.C., touring museums and meeting actual authors, felt life-changing. But when I burst into our living room, practically floating on excitement, Stephanie's announcement that she'd made junior varsity cheerleading completely eclipsed mine. My parents, instead of acknowledging my accomplishment, erupted into applause for Stephanie, already planning a celebratory dinner. "Oh, Chelsea," my mother finally said, barely glancing my way, "I'm sure your little writing thing is nice too." "It's an essay contest, Mom," I'd corrected softly, clutching my certificate tightly. She'd waved me away, already busy snapping pictures of Stephanie posing in her new cheer uniform. That familiar sting of invisibility tightened my throat as I quietly retreated to my bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. The pattern only deepened as we grew older. College graduation was supposed to be my shining moment. Honors, internships, job offers already lining up. But Stephanie announced her engagement at my graduation dinner, casually flashing her glittering diamond ring as if the timing were just a happy accident. My parents gasped, cried joyful tears, and spent the rest of the evening toasting Stephanie's future marriage, while my achievements sat quietly ignored, like decorations at someone else's party. Even when I climbed the corporate ladder, building my career brick by careful brick, promotions, pay raises, and accolades accumulated without fanfare from my family. My mother would murmur polite congratulations, my father would nod absently, but their eyes remained fixed firmly on Stephanie's latest dramas. Credit card debts, a new puppy she couldn't care for, her insistence that the world owed her everything she wanted. Meanwhile, Stephanie drifted aimlessly from job to job, living off credit cards and parental bailouts. But whenever she showed even the slightest hint of responsibility, paying a bill on time, finally getting through an entire year without switching apartments, my parents threw her celebrations that felt painfully lavish compared to their muted reactions toward me. I poured a glass of water, my hand trembling slightly with old hurt. I'd tried not to care, told myself their validation didn't matter. But as I sipped slowly, swallowing the lump forming in my throat, I realized that beneath all the resentment lay a deep longing to be truly seen. My successes, my hard work, they deserved acknowledgement, even if my family refused to give it. Setting the glass down, I took a deep breath. That longing, though still tender, now felt different. It wasn't a plea for their approval anymore. It was the determination to honor myself, even if they never did. Last weekend wasn't just a breaking point. It was the first step toward finally becoming visible on my own terms. And from now on, I intended to shine brightly enough for everyone to see, whether my family chose to acknowledge it or not. The turning point arrived on an ordinary Thursday night about 2 years ago. I was sprawled across my sofa, exhaustion pulsing through every muscle, half listening to yet another voicemail from Stephanie whining about her latest self-inflicted financial disaster. "Chels, Mom says you might be able to help me out again just till next month." Her tone was entitled, laced with impatience, as if my role as her personal ATM were a given. But this time, something clicked inside me, a quiet, burning anger. I ended the message abruptly and tossed my phone aside, a surge of resolve replacing the usual resignation. "Enough," I whispered into the silence of my empty apartment, as though speaking the word aloud could somehow make it true. No more. Fueled by frustration, I grabbed my laptop and opened a blank document. I didn't have a plan exactly, just the determination to redirect my energy somewhere meaningful. Something entirely mine. For years, my marketing career had steadily grown, quietly successful, but always overshadowed by Stephanie's drama. What if I stopped hiding in her shadow and built something truly great, something undeniable? That night marked the start of Barrett Marketing Solutions. It wasn't glamorous at first, late nights hunched over my laptop, weekends spent researching, building strategies for small, overlooked businesses. Slowly, I assembled a loyal client base, businesses that valued my insights, grateful to finally be seen by someone who genuinely cared. With each small victory, my confidence grew stronger, the invisible chains linking me to my family's expectations loosening bit by bit. Nobody knew. Not my parents, not Stephanie, especially not Stephanie. I'd become fiercely protective of this fledgling dream. They'd never understood my ambitions before, so why risk their dismissal now? Every deal I landed, every satisfied client became another brick in the foundation of my secret empire, a silent triumph against the lifetime of indifference I'd endured. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed during family dinners or holiday visits. Sitting quietly as my parents fawned over Stephanie's latest superficial achievement, I'd smile politely, keeping my own victories hidden deep inside. Every snide remark or subtle jab became fuel, reinforcing my determination never to beg for their approval. Barrett Marketing Solutions was growing stronger, inching closer to a tipping point, one they couldn't ignore, even if they tried. Finally, that tipping point arrived. A major national retailer noticed my company's impact and invited me to pitch a nationwide partnership, a multi-million-dollar contract that could change my life overnight. It felt surreal, standing at the precipice of success I'd built entirely on my own, without anyone in my family suspecting a thing. But instead of excitement, I felt a strange mixture of pride and nervous dread. Success, real and visible, would force a confrontation I'd avoided my entire life. How would my parents react when they finally saw the daughter they'd always dismissed stepping decisively into the spotlight? Would Stephanie's entitlement erupt into bitterness, resentment spilling over into anger? Taking a deep breath, I realized the answers didn't matter anymore. I'd earned this moment. If my family couldn't celebrate my success, that was their failure, not mine. For the first time, the anticipation of their reaction didn't fill me with anxiety, but instead something far stronger: courage. The day of the annual Barrett family dinner dawned bright and deceptively cheerful. I stood at my bedroom window staring at the early sunlight spilling across the neatly trimmed lawn of the home I'd worked so hard to make my own. The familiar dread was there, a low hum beneath the morning quiet, but this time it mingled with something else. Anticipation, perhaps even defiance. This evening wasn't just another obligatory family gathering filled with polite silences and masked criticisms. It would mark the first time since launching Barrett Marketing Solutions that I'd face my family, now on the verge of my life's biggest professional triumph. Tomorrow morning, I had the meeting of a lifetime, presenting my business to the National Retail Board. If all went well, I'd soon have contracts worth millions. But tonight, I'd still have to survive dinner with the three people whose approval I'd once craved but now realized I'd long since outgrown. As I dressed for the evening, selecting an outfit deliberately neutral, simple blouse, understated jewelry, I rehearsed my strategies. Keep conversations superficial. Smile through their thinly veiled insults. Do not rise to Stephanie's provocations. Above all, remain calm. I couldn't afford to lose focus now. But as I checked my reflection smoothing the invisible wrinkles from my skirt, anxiety churned in my stomach. My phone buzzed suddenly and I jumped, my heart briefly racing, then exhaled deeply when I saw the name. It was Jody, my closest friend and confidant, one of the very few who knew my secret. "You holding up okay?" Her voice was gentle but probing. "Yeah," I sighed, forcing a smile she couldn't see, just mentally prepping myself. "You've got this, Chels," Jody said firmly. "They've had power over you for too long, it's your turn now." Her words warmed me, easing some of my tension. "Thanks, Joe," I murmured, genuinely grateful. "I'll call you afterward, promise." The drive to my parents' house was quiet, punctuated only by the steady hum of the road and the rhythm of my breathing. I parked at the curb, pausing to gather myself before stepping out of the car. Their house, grand, imposing, filled with family memories that had always felt bittersweet, loomed large. I climbed the porch steps deliberately, each footfall measured as though preparing for battle. Stephanie greeted me at the door, dressed impeccably, her hair perfectly styled, radiating smug entitlement. "Chelsea," she purred, eyeing my modest appearance with thinly veiled disdain, "you're looking practical, as usual." "Thanks, Steph," I replied calmly, stepping past her. My parents waited in the formal dining room, their smiles polite but guarded. The table gleamed with fine china, crystal glasses sparkling like tiny, sharp warnings. My mother hugged me briefly, her perfume familiar and cloying. "Glad you could finally join us," she said lightly, as if I'd kept them waiting for hours rather than minutes. Dinner began predictably. My father poured the wine, my mother gushed over Stephanie's pregnancy glow, and Stephanie herself launched into another well-rehearsed narrative about her needs and struggles. My accomplishments, still carefully hidden, remained invisible, buried beneath polite inquiries about my steady job and thinly veiled remarks implying I could be doing more. But tonight, for the first time ever, their criticisms didn't sting quite as sharply. Tonight, I had a secret, a source of strength entirely mine. They had no idea that by tomorrow, everything about me, about us, would change. The dinner wore on, the heavy silence broken only by the scrape of silverware and Stephanie's incessant self-praise. I shifted uneasily in my chair, forcing myself to swallow the carefully prepared roast beef that suddenly tasted bitter. Each bite felt harder than the last, my throat tightening under the weight of my family's thinly disguised contempt. "Chelsea, dear," my mother began sweetly, setting down her wineglass and turning her piercing gaze in my direction. My heart sank. I knew this tone. It was gentle, superficially warm, but beneath it lay something sharp, designed to wound. "We've been meaning to talk to you about your house." "My house?" I echoed slowly, meeting her eyes warily. "Yes, honey," she continued, her voice carefully neutral as though discussing the weather. "With Stephanie expecting now, And given how much space she'll need, it really does seem silly for you to have that big place all to yourself. Stephanie nodded eagerly, reaching out dramatically to squeeze our mother's hand. Honestly, Chels, Mom's right, you're barely even home, it just makes more sense for me. My pulse quickened, heat creeping into my cheeks. I tightened my grip on the fork, knuckles whitening as I struggled to maintain my composure. Stephanie, it's my house, I said quietly, my voice trembling slightly, despite my efforts to keep it steady. I bought it, I pay for it, I worked incredibly hard for it. My father cleared his throat sharply, the sound reverberating ominously in the quiet room. Chelsea, family helps family, he stated firmly, eyes hard. Stephanie needs support, stability, especially now. Don't be selfish. The word selfish sliced through me, the insult landing precisely as he'd intended. After years of supporting Stephanie's reckless spending, of quietly covering bills and debts whenever they inevitably spiraled out of control, hearing him call me selfish felt like a gut punch. I glanced helplessly around the table. My mother wore a carefully blank expression, Stephanie was smirking triumphantly, and my father stared back unyieldingly. The realization hit me sharply. This wasn't a request, it was a demand, an expectation of compliance. They truly believed my home was something they could redistribute according to their own twisted sense of fairness. I'm sorry, I said finally, fighting to keep my voice level, my anger under control, but my answer is no. The air grew thick with sudden tension. Stephanie's smile vanished, replaced by indignation. Excuse me? I said no, I repeated more firmly now. You can't just take my home because Stephanie can't manage her own life. Chelsea Barrett, my mother hissed, her voice dropping dangerously. You will not speak to your sister like that. Stephanie folded her arms, eyes narrowing in offense. I told you she'd act like this, she spat bitterly to our parents. Always jealous, always resentful. My father slammed his fist down, rattling the plates and silencing us all instantly. Enough, Chelsea, we've made our decision. If you choose to defy us, there will be consequences. My heart pounded fiercely in my chest, anger rising, drowning out fear. I stared at my family, at the faces I'd spent a lifetime trying desperately to please, and felt something inside me harden. They weren't going to change, and they'd never truly see me. I'd known it for years, but now the truth was glaringly undeniable. As I met their defiant stares, one thought surged to the surface, clear and unshakable. Their approval wasn't worth my dignity. Tonight would be different. Tonight, I would stand my ground. The silence after my father's threat stretched unbearably, each passing second tightening around my chest like an invisible fist. Stephanie leaned back smugly, waiting for me to cave, my mother's carefully painted lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line, eyes narrowed in icy judgment. But this time, this single defining moment, I refused to buckle under their pressure. My father finally broke the silence, voice measured and disturbingly calm. Chelsea, you've always struggled to grasp your responsibilities to this family, he began coldly, his tone dripping with disappointment. But your blatant selfishness tonight crosses the line. If you refuse to put family first, perhaps it's time you reconsider your place within it. I blinked, my breath hitching in shock. Was he really implying what it sounded like? My mother nodded solemnly, reaching over to clutch Stephanie's hand. We can no longer support your choices, Chelsea, she said quietly, eyes glinting sharply. You've made your priorities very clear, and unfortunately they don't align with ours. My stomach twisted painfully. You're disowning me because I won't hand over my home to Stephanie? My voice cracked slightly, betraying a lifetime of bottled-up hurt. Actions have consequences, my father snapped, his eyes steely. You've chosen yourself, and now you'll see exactly how lonely that choice can be. Stephanie exhaled dramatically, placing a hand protectively over her belly, ever the victim. Honestly, Chels, you've always resented me, but this, it's just cruel. The word cruel landed sharply, deepening the ache already blossoming in my chest. How many years had I endured her entitlement, her careless disregard, quietly absorbing every selfish demand? Yet now, standing up for myself, just once, made me cruel? My parents rose abruptly, chairs scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. Stephanie followed suit, eyeing me warily, a false expression of wounded innocence painted across her features. Think about what you've done. My father commanded icily, already moving toward the door, my mother trailing behind like a silent shadow. Stephanie paused in front of me, eyes cold, voice dripping with Fogue's sympathy. "I hope you're happy, Chelsea," she whispered viciously. "You've destroyed this family over nothing." I watched numbly as they moved toward the entryway, anger and sorrow swirling chaotically inside me. Was this really the end? All those years of sacrifice, of quiet, unseen dedication to a family that now discarded me without a second thought? Suddenly, Stephanie turned back sharply, keys jingling defiantly in her manicured fingers. "Oh, and we'll be by tomorrow to start moving me into my new home. Make it easier on everyone, okay?" Her entitled tone shattered the numbness, reigniting a spark of fiery anger deep within me. I clenched my fists tightly at my sides, the sharp bite of my nails grounding me in reality. "No," I hissed through gritted teeth. "Absolutely not. You're not taking my house. It's mine." Stephanie laughed dismissively, shaking her head. "We'll see about that." As the front door slammed shut, leaving me standing alone amid the echoes of their contempt, clarity washed over me like ice water. I'd spent a lifetime seeking their validation, accepting crumbs of affection, desperate to belong. But no longer. This wasn't loss, it was liberation. I lifted my chin, determination replacing the pain etched across my features. The Barrett family I'd known, demanding, manipulative, cruel, no longer controlled my story. Tonight, their reign ended, and my life would finally begin. The echoes of their departure faded quickly, replaced by a heavy, almost suffocating silence. My breathing grew shallow, my mind racing to process the brutal finality of what had just unfolded. Alone in my dining room, dishes still half filled with food meant for a family gathering, reality settled in. They'd truly disowned me, expelled me from their twisted version of love. My home, my sanctuary suddenly felt fragile, threatened. I sank into the nearest chair, gripping the table edge tightly, knuckles white as the room blurred through angry tears. Was Stephanie serious? Would they actually show up tomorrow, expecting me to hand over the keys? Anxiety surged through me, cold and bitter. After years of tolerating their demands, part of me wondered if they'd simply forced their way in, refusing to accept my boundaries. Panic rose sharply, tightening my chest. I reached instinctively for my phone, desperate for reassurance from someone, anyone, who genuinely cared. My fingers shook as I dialed Jody, her comforting voice answering almost immediately. "Chelsea, what's wrong? They're going to take my house, Joe," I whispered desperately, my voice quivering despite my effort to sound calm. "They disowned me tonight, and now Stephanie says she's moving in tomorrow. What if they really do?" "Chelsea, breathe," Jody instructed gently but firmly, cutting through my panic. "They can't do that. It's your home. You're legally protected." Her steady voice brought clarity, grounding me. "But Joe," I pressed anxiously, "they've never respected boundaries. What if they just show up, refuse to leave?" "If they do, you call the police," Jody said firmly, her tone leaving no room for argument. "You have every right. Promise me you'll call if they try anything." The idea of involving authorities against my own family twisted painfully in my gut, but I knew Jody was right. I exhaled slowly, steadying myself. "Okay, I'll call if I need to." Sleep eluded me that night, anxiety twisting restlessly beneath my skin. By morning, I felt hollow, fragile, but resolved. I'd barely finished my coffee when the doorbell shattered my uneasy calm. My heart leaped painfully. They'd actually come. Stephanie standing smugly on my doorstep, our parents hovering protectively behind her. "Move aside, Chelsea," Stephanie said arrogantly, pushing forward slightly, an entitled queen claiming her prize. "The sooner we finish, the sooner you can move on." "No," I responded, standing firm despite the tremor in my voice. "You're not coming in. This is my home." Stephanie scoffed, rolling her eyes dismissively. "Oh, please, stop being ridiculous." She stepped forward again, hand already reaching past me toward the doorframe. "You're only embarrassing yourself." Something inside me snapped. Without thinking, without hesitation, I grabbed my phone, fingers shaking slightly as I dialed 3 numbers I never imagined I'd need. 911, what's your emergency?" My voice sounded strange, distant, steady yet surreal. "I need assistance. There are people attempting to forcibly enter my home." Stephanie froze, eyes wide with disbelief, shock quickly replaced by rage. "Are you serious right now, Chelsea?" "Dead serious," I said quietly, unyielding. "You made your choice, Steph. Now I'm making mine." Minutes later, flashing lights illuminated the morning street. Neighbors gathered curiously as officers calmly but firmly removed my outraged family from my doorstep, their shouts fading into stunned silence. Standing alone in the quiet aftermath, relief flooded me, mingling with grief and empowerment. I'd finally drawn the line. I'd chosen myself. And for the first time in my life it felt exactly right. The police cars slowly pulled away, their lights fading into the distance, leaving a heavy silence in their wake. Curious neighbors lingered for a moment, offering sympathetic nods or awkward half-smiles before retreating to their homes. I stood on my porch, breathing in the crisp morning air, my pulse gradually slowing as reality settled around me. My family had just been escorted away by police, removed from my life as definitively as they'd once removed me from theirs. This wasn't just a line drawn, it was a fortress built, solid and impenetrable. There was no turning back now, no apology or reconciliation possible after what had just unfolded. Still, beneath the fierce satisfaction was a raw, aching sadness. No matter how toxic, they were still my family, people I'd once desperately wanted approval from. But that longing had finally broken, replaced by clarity. They'd chosen entitlement over empathy, control over love. The hypocrisy had finally been laid bare, undeniable to everyone watching. A soft voice broke through my reverie. "Chelsea?" I turned to see Jody standing at the edge of my driveway, coffee cups in hand, her expression gentle and concerned. My breath hitched slightly, relief washing over me as I moved toward her, taking the offered cup, gratefully. "You came," I murmured, gripping the warm cup tightly as if anchoring myself to reality. "Of course I did," she said firmly, pulling me into a comforting hug. "I saw the lights, and I knew you'd need someone." We sat on my porch steps, sipping our coffee in thoughtful silence. Eventually, Jody spoke softly, breaking the quiet with careful honesty. "You did the right thing, Chelsea. They gave you no choice." "I know," I said quietly, my voice trembling slightly. "But it still hurts. I spent my whole life hoping they'd finally see me, finally appreciate me, and instead, they tried to take everything I've built." "Because your success threatens them," Jody replied thoughtfully, her voice gentle but firm. "You prove they were wrong about you, that you didn't need them. That terrifies people like your family." I nodded slowly, her words resonating deeply. The anger I'd felt toward them wasn't just about Stephanie's entitlement or my parents' late coldness. It was about the painful realization that they'd never truly loved me for who I was, only for what I could give, what they could control. "Thank you for being here," I whispered, emotion swelling in my chest. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Jo." "That's what family does," she replied softly, squeezing my hand reassuringly. "We show up." Her words settled warmly within me, easing the ache left by my biological family's betrayal. Jody was right. Family wasn't defined by blood. It was defined by loyalty, love, and genuine support. In that moment, the friendship we'd nurtured over the years transformed into something deeper, something stronger. Finally, I stood up, exhaling deeply as though shedding the last remnants of old pain. "I won't hide anymore, Jo," I said decisively. "I'm done pretending, done protecting them. From now on, I choose who matters, who stays." She smiled warmly, nodding in approval. "About damn time." We laughed softly, a moment of relief and clarity amid the emotional wreckage of the morning. The future suddenly felt wide open, filled with possibility, strength, and freedom. I glanced one final time at the spot where my family had stood, where their control had finally shattered, then turned resolutely toward the door of my home. Their hypocrisy would no longer hold power over me. From now on, the only voice shaping my life would be my own. That evening, my house, once the scene of a humiliating showdown, filled slowly with laughter, warmth, and the comforting chaos of my closest friends. Jody had quietly spread the word, gathering our small circle without any fuss, and before long, the quiet hum of genuine support surrounded me like a shield. Each face arriving through my front door carried not judgment or demands, but gentle reassurance and understanding. There was Marcy, practical and steady, who showed up carrying boxes of pizza and bottles of wine, quietly laying out plates and napkins as if it were any other casual night. Wayne and Tammy arrived shortly after, their easygoing banter filling the entryway, instantly softening the lingering tension of the day. And then, as the house filled, each familiar smile offered silent comfort, reminding me what real family felt like. Gathered around the living room, pizza boxes strewn casually on the coffee table, the conversation drifted easily, from jokingly dissecting the morning's drama to sharing stories of their own family struggles, each revelation easing my lingering embarrassment. Tammy leaned over at one point, squeezing my hand lightly. "Honestly, Chels, I think most of us have dreamed about kicking our toxic families out at least once," she joked, eyes sparkling with playful sincerity. Laughter rippled around the room, genuine and healing, lifting some of the weight from my chest. "Yeah, but Chels actually did it," Wayne chimed in proudly. "That's legendary." Despite the joking, their eyes conveyed genuine admiration, empathy, and understanding. No judgment, no expectation of apologies or explanations, just quiet acceptance, a welcome change from the impossible standards my biological family had enforced for so long. The conversation eventually shifted, naturally, to my company and the upcoming meeting with the national retailer. I hesitated briefly, the old instinct to minimize my achievements flickering briefly before disappearing completely. Why hide anymore? This was my moment, my triumph, and I deserved to celebrate it with the people who actually cared. "The pitch is tomorrow morning," I finally announced, heart beating faster with excitement and anticipation. "If it goes well, it'll completely change everything for Barrett Marketing Solutions." Jody raised her glass in mock seriousness. "To Chelsea Barrett, badass business queen," she toasted warmly, a chorus of cheers and laughter echoing around the room as everyone joined in enthusiastic. The evening passed gently, easing away the sharp edges of the morning's pain, replacing them with a newfound sense of belonging. Eventually, as the group began drifting toward the door, Tammy lingered, pulling me aside gently. "Chelsea, tonight showed you something important," she said earnestly, voice warm yet serious. "Family doesn't have to be about blood. It's about who shows up, who stands with you. You deserve people who see and value you." Her words settled warmly in my heart, resonating deeply. "I think I'm finally starting to believe that," I whispered back honestly. She hugged me tightly, then slipped quietly out the door. The house emptied slowly, leaving me standing alone in the peaceful stillness, a comforting sense of calm washing over me. This space, once threatened, now felt sacred, filled with genuine memories and support. I moved through my home slowly, turning off lights, savoring the quiet reassurance left behind by my chosen family. Their warmth lingered in each room, erasing the morning's painful echoes, reminding me of the truth I'd finally discovered. Family wasn't defined by DNA, it was defined by loyalty, kindness, and love, by the people who chose, time and again, to show up when it mattered most. And tonight, in their presence, I'd finally felt truly seen. In the weeks that followed, I slowly built walls, firm yet necessary, to protect the peace I'd fought so hard to reclaim. My phone buzzed constantly at first, angry voicemails and demanding texts from my parents and Stephanie flooding in, accusations flying freely. But I no longer flinched at their insults or threats. Each message only hardened my resolve to maintain the boundaries I'd finally established. The first step was simple but symbolic. I changed the locks on my house. The heavy metallic click of the new keys in my palm felt empowering, a tangible reminder that this space was mine alone. My sanctuary, my rules. No longer would anyone walk through this door uninvited or unwelcome. Next, I blocked their numbers, cutting off their toxic attempts to reestablish control. With each click of the block button, a quiet sense of relief settled deeper within me, pushing aside any lingering doubts about whether I'd gone too far. The line had been drawn, clear and permanent. But even with practical measures in place, emotional boundaries were trickier. Therapy became my lifeline. Sitting across from Dr. Audrey Bennett, whose calm demeanor provided steady reassurance, I began unraveling years of suppressed pain, disappointments, and guilt. One afternoon, nestled safely within her quiet office, I admitted softly, "Sometimes I still wonder if it was my fault, if I should have tried harder to make them understand." Dr. Bennett leaned forward gently, her gaze steady. "Chelsea, you spent your entire life trying to make them see you, sacrificing your own well-being for their approval. You couldn't force them to change, especially when they refused to acknowledge their role." Her words felt like a balm soothing wounds that had festered quietly beneath the surface. Gradually, session by session, the tangled web of guilt and obligation began to unravel, leaving behind clarity and understanding. My family's rejection wasn't my failure, it was theirs. And with that realization, something remarkable happened. I started to heal. Outside therapy, life transformed gradually. Friendships deepened, their support unwavering. Work blossomed, with Barrett Marketing Solutions thriving beyond my wildest dreams, landing the coveted partnership I'd once only imagined. The once quiet pride I'd hidden now flourished openly, my success no longer shadowed by fear of overshadowing Stephanie. Yet even amid these victories, reminders of my family still surfaced unexpectedly. One afternoon, returning home from a business meeting, I spotted my mother's familiar handwriting on an envelope tucked neatly into my mailbox. My heart skipped painfully, anxiety prickling my skin. But rather than opening it, I walked deliberately to the kitchen, tossing it directly into the trash, unopened, without hesitation. I refused to be drawn back into their manipulative orbit, even briefly. Later that night, sipping tea on my porch under the stars, Jody gently nudged me. "You did the right thing, Chels," she said softly, guessing my internal battle. "They don't deserve space in your life anymore." I nodded slowly, conviction steadying my voice. "I know." In the quiet stillness that followed, I felt a profound sense of peace. I'd reclaimed control, no longer at the mercy of their judgment or demands. Each boundary, locks changed, numbers blocked, letters discarded unread, was another brick fortifying my new world, my sanctuary built upon respect, kindness, and genuine love. Finally, I felt truly free, safe within walls built not from bitterness or revenge, but self-worth and unwavering resolve. The fortress I'd built wasn't isolating, it was protective, filled with warmth, authenticity, and strength. And from behind those carefully constructed boundaries, I discovered an empowering truth. I alone defined who mattered in my life. A year after my family's expulsion from my home, and effectively my life, I found myself standing in a spacious, sunlit room, gazing around with pride. This wasn't just another office, it was the headquarters of the Barrett Foundation, a nonprofit I'd founded to empower young women striving to build careers on their own terms, free from the shadows of family expectations. As I stood there, memories flickered softly in my mind, images of my younger self. Unsure, overlooked, quietly desperate for approval that never came. I'd spent so many years waiting to be seen by people who refused to open their eyes, seeking validation that would always remain just beyond reach. Now, finally free of that burden, I decided to channel my success into something meaningful, something lasting. The foundation's opening day was both exciting and humbling. I moved through the space quietly, straightening photos and displays featuring stories of women we'd already supported. Each face, each journey, resonated deeply within me, echoes of my own struggles reflected in their determination, resilience, and quiet strength. Midway through the afternoon, I paused to speak with Hannah, a young entrepreneur whose business had flourished under the foundation's mentorship. Her eyes sparkled brightly as she described her plans for growth, her excitement infectious. "Chelsea, honestly, I don't know where I'd be without this. Without you," she said earnestly, sincerity clear in her voice. Emotion tightened my throat briefly. "You're exactly where you're supposed to be," I replied gently, smiling warmly. "I just gave you space to believe it yourself." As the day continued, gratitude filled me profoundly, not just for the success of the foundation but for the chance to redefine the Barrett name completely, turning it from a legacy of entitlement and favoritism into something empowering, positive, and genuinely inspiring. Late in the afternoon, Jody arrived, smiling warmly as she joined me near a wall covered in framed letters of gratitude from women the foundation had helped. She nudged me playfully, her voice gentle but teasing. "Look at you, Chels, turning family drama into a legacy." I laughed softly, the sound genuine, free from bitterness or regret. "Turns out the best revenge isn't really revenge at all," I said thoughtfully, voice quiet but firm. "It's proving that kindness, integrity, and authenticity matter more than control or manipulation." Jody squeezed my hand reassuringly. "Exactly, you're rewriting your story, and theirs too." Her words resonated deeply, a comforting truth settling warmly inside me. By refusing to perpetuate the cycle of toxicity, I'd reclaimed the Barrett name on my terms, not through anger or vengeance but compassion and purpose. As the event wound down, the crowd gradually dispersed, leaving me once again standing quietly in the foundation's peaceful stillness. My gaze drifted back to the framed letters, stories of struggle, triumph, quiet courage, each one a testament to the power of genuine support and empathy. A profound sense of accomplishment filled me. I'd taken the ashes of my family's rejection, their judgment and cruelty, and transformed them into something beautiful, powerful, meaningful. This wasn't just about overcoming them, it was about stepping fully into myself, becoming the woman I'd always hoped to be. Turning to leave, I took one final glance at the words painted boldly across the entrance wall, now illuminated by the soft, golden glow of sunset. Your worth is yours alone to define. I smiled softly, recognizing the truth in those simple words. My legacy was no longer tied to their approval or acceptance, it was entirely mine, built firmly on kindness, authenticity, and self-respect. And that legacy, I realized deeply, would outlast any bitterness or pain they'd ever caused. The foundation flourished over the next few months, my days filled with meaningful work, genuine connections, and a deep sense of purpose. My calendar, once overshadowed by dread-filled family dinners and tense obligations, now overflowed with events celebrating women's achievements, mentoring sessions, and moments of quiet reflection shared with friends who felt more like family every. Yet, it was during an ordinary, quiet morning alone at home that I finally experienced the profound realization I'd long sought. The sun rose softly, gentle rays filtering through the sheer curtains, bathing my bedroom in warmth. I sat quietly, sipping tea, gazing thoughtfully at a framed photograph Jody had given me, a candid moment captured at the foundation's opening. My smile in the photo was genuine, bright, free of shadows. I traced the frame gently with my fingertips, my thoughts drifting back to the woman I'd once been, desperately seeking approval, validation, acceptance. I'd believed my worth hinged entirely upon others' judgments, my parents, Stephanie, even strangers whose opinions I'd never fully escape. But now, finally, those old beliefs no longer held power over me. In this quiet solitude, clarity washed over me gently but definitively. My family's rejection had wounded me deeply, yet in forcing me to confront my true self, it had also freed me. They'd intended their disapproval to punish me, to force compliance. Instead, it had become the catalyst for my most profound transformation. I set the photograph down carefully, exhaling slowly, feeling a comforting sense of peace settle firmly within me. My validation no longer rested with my parents' acceptance, Stephanie's envy, or the approval of anyone outside myself. It lay entirely within me, in my actions, my choices, and the way I'd learned to truly see and honor who I was. The silence around me felt different now, no longer oppressive or isolating, but comforting, filled with gentle certainty. The years I'd spent trying desperately to prove myself worthy hadn't been wasted. They'd led me directly to this moment of quiet strength, self-acceptance, and genuine peace. My phone buzzed softly, Jody's familiar name lighting up the screen. Smiling gently, I answered warmly. "Morning, Joe." Her cheerful voice filled my ear. "Just checking in, Chels. Everything good?" "Better than good," I replied softly, meaning it completely. "Honestly, I'm exactly where I need to be." There was a pause, filled with quiet understanding. "I'm proud of you, Chelsea," Jody finally said softly, sincerity resonating through each word. Emotion rose briefly, but this time there was no ache, only warmth, gratitude, and gentle affirmation. "I'm proud of me too," I whispered quietly, a gentle truth I'd finally learned to claim openly. After the call, I sat a moment longer, savoring the quiet solitude. Today there was no lingering pain, bitterness, or resentment, only peace, deep and real, born of true self-validation. My family's shadow no longer loomed threateningly, their voices silenced completely by my newfound strength. This was freedom, not loud or defiant, but gentle, internal, unshakable. My worth had never truly depended on their validation. It had always existed quietly within, waiting patiently to be recognized. Finally, in this quiet, perfect stillness, I'd claimed it. Have you ever felt invisible, overshadowed, or unappreciated by the very people meant to support you most? If Chelsea's journey resonated with you, you're not alone. So many of us struggle silently, holding on to pain because we're afraid to disappoint others, desperately trying to earn validation from those who might never give it. But here's the beautiful, powerful truth. Your worth is not something others can define. It's something only you hold. Something only you have the power to honor fully. I invite you to share your story in the comments. Let's create a space where genuine experiences are honored and heard. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Remember, your worth, your story, they matter deeply. Embrace who you are, choose people who truly see and value you, and never be afraid to reclaim your narrative. You are stronger, braver, and far more capable than you may have ever believed. Ask yourself, reflect deeply, share boldly. Your story deserves to be heard.